Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a truly fascinating constitutional crisis from Islamic history, pulling straight from our source material on the early caliphate. I want you to imagine this scenario. The head of state, Caliph Umar ibn Al-Khattab, has just been stabbed. His death is completely imminent. And practically overnight, the state is teetering on the brink of a massive power vacuum. So, how do you guarantee a peaceful transition of power in an era where empires were almost always ruled by bloodlines and kings? Well, let's dive right into this. Because what happens next is an absolute masterclass in early anti-hereditary political mechanics. To really grasp the high stakes of Umar's final moments, you have to know that as his death approached, he actually refused to name a single, solitary successor. Instead, he summoned a very specific group of 6 highly influential men. He looked at them and said, "I have looked into the matter and consider you to be the chiefs and leaders of the people. This matter will remain among you alone." He's essentially taking the entire weight of the Islamic State and dropping it squarely onto the shoulders of the select electoral council. Which brings us to the central question of this whole event. How does a state transition power without a king? I mean, if you aren't just handing the crown down to your eldest son, what's the actual legal and constitutional mechanism you use to prevent a total civil war? This isn't just an interesting historical story, it is a meticulously documented blueprint for how to pull off an anti-hereditary transition of power.
All right. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The succession of Umar. 2. The Council of 6. 3. The 3-day limit. 4. Managing the transition. And 5. The final appointment.
Section 1. The succession of Umar. A power vacuum looms. Right when this crisis hit, a group known as the Ahl-Hali Wal-Aqd stepped in. This roughly translates to the influentials, or literally the people of loosing and binding. Basically, these were the heavy hitters, the prominent figures and leaders within the society. When it became completely certain that Umar was going to pass away, this influential group approached him. They explicitly asked him to just nominate a successor, kind of like how the first caliph, Abu Bakr, had done for him. But Umar was really hesitant to just point to one guy and make a direct nomination.
Now, here is where it gets interesting, especially regarding how Umar handled the temptation of starting a dynasty. Someone actually had the nerve to suggest that Umar appoint his own son, Abdullah ibn Umar. And to be fair, his son was a brilliant scholar and an expert in government affairs, but Umar absolutely shut it down. He harshly rejected the idea, stating, "Allah curse you. You were not saying this for Allah's sake." You see, Umar was famously known as the door against tribulations, and he was fiercely opposed to even the hint of hereditary rule creeping into the state. He did allow his highly qualified son to sit in on the council as a non-voting advisor, but he absolutely forbade him from being a candidate.
Moving on to Section 2, the Council of 6, choosing the next caliph.
So, if the son is out, and a single nominee is out, who actually makes the call? Umar handpicked 6 specific men. And let me tell you, these were not random citizens pulled off the street. We're talking Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Uthman bin Affan, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Zubair ibn al-Awwam, and Talha ibn Ubaydullah, though he was traveling at the time. Look at the positions they held: ministers, judges, military commanders, police chiefs. Plus, the source material notes they were all from the 10 promised Jannah, which meant they held the absolute highest spiritual and political credibility you could possibly have in that society. They were the undisputed heavyweights.
Section 3. The 3-day limit. Forcing a resolution. Umar didn't just lock these guys in a room and wish them the best of luck. He put some incredibly severe constitutional rules in place. And the magic number you need to remember here is 3. The source details that Umar mandated a strict 3-day and 3-night limit for this council to consult and finalize the electoral contract. He famously told them, "Do not let the 4th day come without having an Amir upon you." This time frame wasn't just some arbitrary guess, it was deeply pragmatic, designed to entirely shut down any chance of prolonged instability or political plotting.
And the way this rule was enforced was, frankly, shockingly severe. Our source explicitly reports that Umar commanded that if a majority agreed on a candidate but a minority dissented after those 3 days were up, the dissenters were to be executed by the sword. Now, we are just impartially reporting the historical texts here, but you have to understand the rationale behind it. This extreme threat of execution was designed to absolutely guarantee that a civil war, known as fitna, wouldn't break out. The unified survival of the state was prioritized above literally everything else. So why does this matter so much legally? Well, it established a massive precedent known as ijma as-sahaba, or a consensus of the companions. In Islamic jurisprudence, when all the companions agree on something, it acts as a decisive legal indication. The source makes a fascinating point. Despite the immense sanctity placed on Muslim blood,
Not a single companion objected to Omar's incredibly harsh rule. Because of that silence, it established a binding legal precedent regarding the absolute, life-or-death necessity of a swift power transition within that strict 3-day window.
Section 4. Managing the transition. Running the state.
Because think about it, a massive state can't just pause its daily operations just because the leader has died, right? This next step Umar took is a brilliant early example of the separation of powers. He appointed a man named Suhaib as the Provisional Ameer, tasking him to lead the prayer and run the state, which importantly included the power to actually implement punishments. But on the flip side, he tasked Abu Talha to lead the police, taking 50 men to physically guard the electoral council. The crucial takeaway here, the military and police were strictly protectors. They were deliberately kept completely separate from the political mechanics of choosing the next leader, which was a brilliant way to prevent a military dictatorship from taking root.
Let's look a bit closer at that Provisional Ameer role. This was a temporary deputy appointed specifically so the community wouldn't be leaderless. When the texts say, Umar told Suhaib to lead the prayer, the source material explains this is actually a rhetorical device where a part of something is mentioned, but the whole thing is intended, meaning leading the prayer was a metaphor for leading the entire state and maintaining executive authority during this super fragile transition period.
Finally, Section 5. The final appointment. Resolving the deadlock.
Okay, the 3 days are ticking away, the police are literally guarding the door, and the Provisional Ameer is running the state. How did this Council of Six actually break the tie? It played out through a really meticulous democratic process. First, to diffuse the tension, Abdurrahman ibn Auf voluntarily withdrew his own name from the running. Second, acting as a completely neutral arbitrator, he went out into the capital city of Medina and polled everyone: the clans, the original citizens, the migrants, and the army chiefs. He engaged in widespread public shura, or consultation. Third, he found the public was pretty split between Uthman and Ali, but more than anything, the people desperately wanted a continuation of the stable policies of the previous caliphs. And fourth, based on that massive consultation, Abdurrahman officially appointed Uthman.
But you have to understand, this appointment isn't just a handshake and a pat on the back. It is formally sealed with something called the bay'at. Our source really emphasizes that the bay'at is a legally binding electoral contract that governs the whole relationship between the Muslims and the Islamic State. The main thing you should take away from this is that it is a formal contract, not just a blind pledge of loyalty. And because it's a contract, it can be subject to very specific legal stipulations. To see exactly how Abdurrahman finalized this, just listen to his exact words to Uthman. I gave the bay'ah to you on condition that you will follow the sunnah of Allah and His Messenger, and the 2 caliphs after him. By explicitly adding that condition to follow the precedent of Abu Bakr and Umar, Abdurrahman legally bound Uthman to specific constitutional constraints. The people wanted continuity, and this contract was crafted to absolutely guarantee it. Which brilliantly illustrates our final big legal takeaway. Extra conditions can be added to the bay'ah to unify the Muslims. As long as those conditions don't violate the fundamental purpose of the contract itself, a leader can actually be restricted. According to the source, this proves that a leader's executive power can be constitutionally counterbalanced if the community demands it. It's a remarkable, built-in framework for executive accountability.
So, we'll wrap up this explainer with a bit of a provocative historical what if. Decades after all of this, the caliphate did eventually slip into hereditary dynastic rule. But, as our source points out, a much later ruler named Mu'awiya ibn Yazid tried to reverse it all. He ascended to power, immediately realized the massive flaw of hereditary rule, and actually stepped down. He literally told the people to form a council of 6, exactly like Umar did. Tragically, he died just 40 days into his rule, either poisoned or stabbed. But it really makes you wonder, if he hadn't died, could his attempt to restore Umar's exact electoral blueprint have ended hereditary rule in the empire forever? It's a fascinating piece of history to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible structures that shaped our past.